Hi, my name is Thea Noble, and I'm a student here in the Masters of Science in Entrepreneurship and Innovation program right here at USC Marshall. Currently, only 3% of venture-backed companies have female CEOs. So I am so excited to be able to introduce a wonderful panel of women who are spearheading the change and taking action as they talk about investing in women-led companies. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Anna Barber from Techstars, Rachel Springate from Muse Capital, Manal Hassan from K2 Global, and the lovely moderator, Robin Ward from Founder Forward.
So before we hop into this panel, I just want to do a show of hands. Who is fundraising or planning to raise in the next year? Wow, that's a lot of folks. And then I also want to know who in the room might be interested in becoming a venture capitalist or an angel investor, an investor of some kind. Awesome. We need more women and underestimated founders and funders. So we're just going to hop in and go down the line here. Let me see if I can see you all. And do 90-second intros with just sort of the basics of your firm and the stage that you invest, and then we'll dig into some of the meatier stuff. So go ahead and kick us off.
Okay. Hi, my name is Manal Hassan. I run a fund called K2 Global based in Silicon Valley. I also have an office in Singapore. And it's the first fund was a $183 million fund. I invest all the way from early stage up to pre-IPO, so I kind of write every size of check you can possibly imagine. I tend to be more of a bell curve investor, so I'm either very early, seed and A, or very late. I tend not to be, writing a new check into a company I'm not familiar with at like the B or C. Let's put it that way. And prior to this, I've had all sorts of random roles in my life. I was in computer programming. That's how I started out. Then I was in product marketing. I was a journalist for a while. And for 8 years before I started my fund, I was actually a tech lawyer. So I was representing companies like Uber and Twitter and Square. And then started my fund in 2015.
Awesome. Hi, everybody. I'm Rachel Springate. I have a seed stage fund here in Los Angeles called Muse Capital with my female partner, Asia Grazioli. We like products and businesses that touch the consumer in some way. My background, the uniqueness of our fund is that Asia and I are both very plugged into the Fortune 500 network. We're connected to celebrities, influencers, sports stars, and our expertise is business development, specifically around the early stage of your business, which is where a lot of expertise is needed. And you might not necessarily have the budget to hire the right people. And so we decided to build a fund around it. My background, I started off my career in brand research, and then I moved into the luxury lifestyle management space that had me living and traveling all over the world. My clients were everybody from LVMH. I helped put together the Amex Black Card, and through that is how I built my whole brand and celebrity network. And in 2012, I met a guy who changed my life, a guy called Troy Carter, who you all may know of. And he opened my eyes to what was happening in Silicon Valley and how his network was very valuable. And that was the key to getting me to start the fund.
Anna?
Hi, I'm Anna Barber. I'm the managing director of Techstars LA. So Techstars LA is part of the Techstars Accelerator Network, which is the global network that helps entrepreneurs succeed. It's now a very large investor, I think it's the second largest early stage investor in the world. So we have 45 accelerator programs around the world that are investing both through vertical programs. So we have programs that focus on prop tech and on retail, farm to fork, and then through these city programs. So in the LA program here, which is the one that I run, I focus on the ecosystem. I am emphatically a long LA investor. We've had 2 classes and invested in a total of 20 companies, and 18 of those companies from right here in LA. I was also previously a founder, so I understand the pain and struggle that goes along with starting something from scratch and raising money. And what we do at Techstars is invest really at the very earliest stages, either at the pre-seed or seed stage. And the philosophy is really that early stage founders need a lot more than money. They need mentorship, they need network, they need connections, and most importantly, they need to be surrounded by a group of people that are going through the same thing. It can be a very lonely job being an entrepreneur. And so we aim to fix that and to help companies with all those other resources, not just with the check.
So I'm going to start this first question off with my fellow Trojan, Manal here.
Yes.
Go USC.
Yeah.
What she failed to mention in the $183 million fund is that she actually then means that she's raised the largest ever inaugural tech fund for a women-led fund, which is absolutely phenomenal. Woo! And I'd love to get a little bit deeper on that journey from startup lawyer to raising the largest inaugural women-led tech fund.
As in, how did I do that?
Like, how the hell did you do that?
I
Can
know.
you tell us all?
I know, yeah, I know. I still get a lot of, did you really do that? How did you do that? And that's okay. No, I think it's what a lot of our other panelists this morning have been saying. I think the key to it was, you have to kiss a lot of frogs. You meet a ton of people who reject you, and I mean like hundreds. And that's just part of it, and you just can't let that affect you. You have to have a very clear vision. You have to have something that sets you apart from other VC firms. In my case, because I had the legal background, my pitch was basically, look, all of these traditional non-tech industries are now being transformed by technology. And as a result, startups that are now kind of coming up through the ecosystem are going to need corporate alliances, government alliances as well. And they're going to have a ton of regulatory issues. And oftentimes it takes a very long time before companies get to the stage where they can afford a GC and a chief regulatory officer and this and that and whatever. And what I was saying is I can basically help you with all of that because I'm kind of like 2 for 1. I can help you with all that from day one. And so as a result, a lot of companies in autonomous vehicles, drones, insurance, fintech, cryptocurrency, areas that were heavily regulated kept coming to me and saying, well, we don't need 3 or 4 standard Silicon Valley VCs who have identical skill sets and expertise and educational backgrounds. What we can do with 2 of them and 1 of you, that's a much more balanced situation for us to be in, and we're going to get a lot more out of it as a company. So as a result, I didn't struggle as much with actually getting into some of the best deals. And that's something that a lot of people struggle with. And so I think the key was really setting myself aside and setting myself apart. And the same thing that people told me would be my hindrance, oh, you're going from being a lawyer to a VC, ended up actually being my biggest competitive advantage. And so when I started fundraising and I talked to all my VC friends, because I knew all these folks, I'd been working with them for years. I was a Silicon Valley insider in a way. They would all say, there's no way you can make the transition from law to VC. You need an experienced co-GP. Even when I said, oh, I'm going to raise a $100 million fund, that's too small. Why would you do that? I mean, I got every single thing you could, everything was thrown at me. But it ended up, like I said, it ended up being great for me. And I think we're moving in that direction with venture capital, where in the next 10 years, you're going to see a lot more lawyers turn VC, a lot more doctors turn VC. And a lot of funds are catching on to that, like Andreessen Horowitz, for their new crypto fund, hired a former securities lawyer to run that fund. And you're going to see those kinds of trends come up. So I just kind of took all the things that people told me were the things that were going to get in my way, and I just tried to convert those into, like I said, the things that would set me apart. And as soon as I did that, and like I said, just had a thick skin and kept talking to people, I was eventually able to raise the fund.
You'll notice that a lot of what she said would also apply if she is a founder. She's a founder of a fund. It's similar to what we heard on the last panel, which sort of transitions, Rachel, into what I wanted to ask you, which is, Muse is a newer fund, and so we just heard, some of the difficulties of the fundraising process from founder to investor. I'd love to go more on that. You've been out investor to LP, and what you learned on that journey as a newcomer into the investment space.
For sure. I think that my partner had a very unique look on how we were going to do this, and the 2 of us had been around the startup ecosystem for a long time. but never necessarily on the investment side. And so what we decided to do was go and speak to a mutual friend of ours who is a big investor out of New York. And we had this idea, this vision for a fund, which was, like you were saying, we have a very specific skill set, which is business development in the early stages. And it's very niche. Not everybody knows exactly how to do that. And the two of us were experts in it. And like you, were very connected into Silicon Valley because a lot of them would call us for due diligence on media and entertainment deals. And so we decided to fly up to the Valley and speak to our friends at the big firms and say, look, we have this idea. We want to start a fund. It's not going to be we're not going to write as big a check as you to start, but if you allow us to co-invest, you know the power of our network and that we bring something very different to the table. And unanimously, they said this was a fantastic idea and that they would support us. But we still had never been on the investment side. So the two of us worked with the New York investor to create an initial pool of capital, which was only $2 million. And for us, we did that because we wanted to go out and prove the model. And the model was access to the best deal flow in the world and the ability to influence the startups at that early stage. And so we were very lucky where he knew us both individually and believed in our vision and was like, okay, you guys go out and prove this. And so out of that initial pool of capital, we deployed that into 9 deals, all with incredible, super angels, some of the best names in the Valley. And again, we had a very unique differentiation in terms of what we were providing. And so somehow, we were very lucky in those initial 9 deals. We actually had 2 exits in that time and returned all of the original capital to the investor, which, if you know anything about VC, is very rare. And suddenly, we had some proof of a track record, even though it was early. And when it came to raising our next fund, which was a $20 million fund, we had something to talk about, which was game-changing for us. And so, when it comes to investing, we go through all the same things that investors do. We're certainly not the kind of person that you would see in these meetings. Like, everybody that we're pitching to is typically male. And so you have to work twice as hard. You have to develop a thick skin. But the differentiation for us was what really made us stand out. And a lot like entrepreneurs, friends and family were, crucial in that initial stage where they'd known us and they believed in us and they wrote the initial checks getting us to our first close, and then we were able to have big conversations. And so that's our experience.
Amazing. So oftentimes the really early money is the hardest money, particularly for women and underestimated founders, because there aren't as many women and underestimated founders writing angel checks. And so we need to kind of change that dynamic. But one of the best ways to go out and get that early check is to apply to an accelerator. And Anna, I may be biased because I'm a mentor to Techstars, but Anna runs the best cohort of accelerators in the country, in the world. Techstars LA, which we've got many Techstars LA graduates here today talking. But give us a little bit of the bird's eye view on, what the benefits of the program are outside of just what you would say the education of like how to go raise money is.
Sure, and I think there's a lot of different opinions, and there are a lot of things out there calling themselves accelerators. So I'll just speak specifically to my program, and I think Greta referred to this in the first panel. Greta was actually in our first class last year with her company Blue Fever. So we have a philosophy at Techstars LA, which is personal growth drives company growth. I don't believe that there's any difference at the early stage between the founding team and the company. You are the company. The company has the strengths and weaknesses of the founders, and this is something we work with Robin on a lot. But in terms of kind of where an accelerator fits into your life cycle or your growth, I think it can be really helpful, both in terms of helping you hone in more quickly on product market fit in those early stages, and then really quickly build the network you need. If you think about what's happening at an early stage, you come up with an idea, you have to somehow go from a blank sheet of paper of you in your room to an operating business. And sort of crossing that chasm between when you have meaningful revenue, when you're just an idea and when you have meaningful revenue is kind of where we can come in, because you're fighting the clock. You have a certain amount of time in which to build your product and prove out product market fit, and then attract the right investors and build your team. And you're trying to do all of this while you're also transforming yourself into that person with the idea who has the passion and the drive necessary into being an actual leader of a company that's managing people. So you're on this really, really steep growth curve on a personal level, and you're also in this really, really challenging trajectory, with the company. So what we do is we break that down systematically into helping you develop as a person, helping connect you with the right mentors, whether it's product, whether it's people that can connect you with customers, help you with business development, people that can help you with your structure your cap table, build your financial model, put together your funding strategy, and then working all of that through a system where week over week we systematically help you identify what are your key performance indicators in your company and how can you quickly show traction against them so that you can leave the program kind of accelerating. But what we're also doing is, we're an investor. And so when I choose a company to be in Techstars, I want to be talking to that founder for 7 to 10 years. I want to stick with them and, be their early investor that's their champion as they go off on their journey. And we're also putting together a group. So we have these groups that come in and do this all together. So that becomes your team and your people and your support network, ideally for the life of your company. We've got Slack channels from these classes that are active where founders are helping each other. And I feel like a lot of the best help comes from the other founders, and the people that are in the same boat as you are. And I think particularly for the women, this is valuable because we're putting you in a place where there's other founders and other female founders. So of the 20, and I do keep score. I keep score because it's important, it's something that matters to me, is putting more capital into women and other underestimated founders. And there are 8 female CEOs out of the 20 companies that we've invested in so far.
Those numbers are terrific, by the way, for this industry. Anna's really gone out of her way to get a really diverse group of folks.
And yeah, thank you. So, and there's a whole talk about how we get to that and what I do in the recruiting side to kind of fill the pipeline and whether it's a pipeline problem but that's a conversation for another day. So that's, I think, the value of Techstars and some of the other top accelerators. And we can talk more about how to apply later.
So we had Greta on the last panel, but we have, raise your hand if you're a Techstars graduate. We have Alex over here and Kim over here. So if it's something you're interested in, by all means, find them. Part of the day is to reach out and network, and there's a support group here. So if you're interested in Techstars, chat with them about their experience. I think that it was about 2/3 of the hands in the room that raised money that they're fundraising. So now we're going to get into the brass tacks of what you want to know. All right, how does somebody get your attention? How do they email you or get on the phone with you? And I'm not going to pick, would you guys just jump in?
Well, why don't I start, because I'm really the earliest.
Yeah.
So, if you think about this as like Goldilocks, right? Small, medium, sort of like that. So, first of all, I'm really easy to find. I'm all over social media, and Techstars is sort of apply.techstars.com. Our recruiting process starts in January, but there's always a Techstars recruiting at some point, because we stagger the program, so there's a program somewhere else in the world that's recruiting right now for startups. And there's also a lot of other great accelerator programs. What I would say I look at first, I have to meet founders and make a really quick decision. My decision is almost 100% on a personal level. I am choosing teams, I am not choosing companies. So what I care about is, do you care about the problem you're solving? That is literally the first and most important thing that I'm looking at. So I see founders sometimes who I think want to be a founder. They don't necessarily care about what they're doing. They just want to start a company, right? That's not interesting because that level of engagement with what you're doing isn't going to sustain you over the 7 to 10 years that it's going to take you to push this rock up this hill. You literally have to have no other choice. So the story that I'll tell is when I started the company that I founded, which was, it was called Scribble Press. It was a platform for kids to make their own books. I met a woman on an airplane who pitched me the idea, and I literally felt the hair on my arm stand up. I knew, I was 7 months pregnant at the time, and I had 3 other kids that I was 2 stepkids and another kid I was raising at home. I knew that there was no way after that plane flight that I was not going to start this company. So it's kind of that level of conviction that you have to have and that I'm looking for. And then the second thing is, there has to be a big market there. There has to be a big, exciting market. So a combination of kind of founder conviction and passion for the idea in a large market is what I look for.
Mm-hmm. I think on our side, because we're a little later with seed, I think definitely vision and confidence. The other thing is being able to tell a great story, because we all love great stories, but more importantly, especially for female founders, being good with data and metrics to support your story is really important, because I think that's not something that naturally comes to all of us, but if you can entwine stats and data with your story, that's going to really certainly get my attention. Talk about the team and why you're the best team to do it. And we're very relationship driven in our organization, and we're very plugged into the LA and San Francisco communities. And so it's always nice to have someone that knows us or some sort of warm introduction, because that will really help get our attention for sure.
Yeah, I'm also starting at late seed as well, so I don't do, sometimes I'm the first check-in, sometimes I'm more in the second round of checks. Yeah, I like warm intros, those are good, but people can also, cold intros are also okay. Similar to what Anna was saying, conviction is everything, authenticity, passion. I do agree, it's kind of like your life has to depend on it a little bit. And I mean, like even for me personally, when I started my fund, I'd already had my older son. I'd just given birth to my second one when I started working on it. Like I was still on maternity leave. My older one had a number of health issues, and I was 24/7 having to deal with him. Then I went through cancer. I still did my fund through all of this. It's not a competition for who has the crappiest life story, but I did it because I had to, and I did it because, honestly, I'm being totally honest, I couldn't with my health situation and my children's situations, I couldn't be in a corporate job anymore. That's why I left. But I had to earn a living. So I was like, how do I figure out a way to have flexible work hours, run my own thing, still be here for my kids? And I found a way. So it was very much about survival for me. So, I mean, that's kind of like what I'm looking for. It's like the do or do not, there is no try. It's like, you gotta think you're gonna be able to do it. And some of like what the person's prior resume looks like does tell me a lot about that. Like if you kind of muddled your way through college or muddled your way through grad school, I don't know. I mean, did you get really good grades? Like even if you're a fresh grad out of college, like did you work hard? Did you get good grades? Like did you do anything that had a leadership role of any kind? Like, you're kind of looking for that type of person who is efficient, who gets a lot done, who is driven, who's sitting here while we're talking and their mind is just racing with ideas and things they want to do and how are they going to do it. And, like those are the kind of people that you really want to work with. And usually you can figure out who that is within a first meeting.
So let's skip to the following question. What is your golden nugget advice for what not to do when either pitching you or let's even call it that first 30-minute call? Like what do entrepreneurs do that drives you nuts or is like a giant red flag so none of these amazing women do that?
So the one thing, I think if you don't remember anything else, this is what I would say is you want to listen more than you're talking, even when you're pitching. And that sounds counterintuitive because you're trying to unfold an idea for someone, but it should look like a conversation. It shouldn't look like a monologue, right? So when I have someone who comes in and talks at me, like they're trying really hard to convince me, and they're throwing out all this. Data is great, by the way. I mean, I absolutely love data, and you've got to understand the numbers of your business, whether it's market size or your business model, your financial model. You really need to know that inside and out. But you want to engage my curiosity, right? If you can get me asking questions, that is the best signal that the conversation is going to continue. And I see so many people who shut the door, leave the room, think they've had a great meeting because they said everything that was on their list of the 20 things they want to say. They've got no idea what I'm thinking because they didn't take the time to engage my curiosity.
I think For me, it's do your research. It's so frustrating when we have entrepreneurs pitch us and we're not the right company for them. Like, we don't do pre-seed, we don't do you have to have a product, has to be a market, and it is super annoying when people are, trying to pitch you and we're not the right fit. So definitely do your research on the VCs that you're trying to target, and look at the companies that they've invested in. Have they had any exits? How are you, going to achieve the same kind of results? And then I think the other thing, I've forgotten now, but come back to me.
We can go back.
I know where to find you.
Yeah, for me, it's, one of the issues I see a lot is when I ask how much are you raising and I don't get a clear answer. Know how much you want to raise, say it with conviction, have done your research around like how much money do you actually need to, for the next 12 to 18 months, have some metrics around that. I know it's all very fuzzy at early stages and things change, but like have some realistic picture of what you're trying to do. And so when people aren't specific enough, for me, that kind of rubs me the wrong way personally, I would say.
I've remembered now. Do not avoid the competition slide. That's really important. When I ask people like, who's your competition, what else is out there, if that does not exist in your pitch, that's a big red flag for me, because I want to know that you've done your research, that you know all of the other products that are out there, and that helps you pitch how you are different and how you're going to solve this problem. So
That
avoid.
feeds into one of my red flags, which is never disparage your competition. So when you're on that slide and you're having a conversation, too many entrepreneurs are so tied to their business that they very quickly dismiss the conversation. There's a way to do that is a mature way to discuss what that business is and where your unique value proposition is, other than by quickly dismissing the competition because they don't have this, that, or the other. A big one for me. Okay, so let's move on to the following. We've gotten from this conversation a nice dig into some of the qualities that you've seen that you like to look for in founders. But I want to double click on that a little bit. And I'm going to start with Anna, because you get this unique inside baseball view at founders over a 3-month period. So like, what are, let's call it the top 3 to 5 qualities that you see that start to emerge in the founders where you're like, oh, these guys are gonna raise money and be very successful for the long game, not just the short game?
So I would say, to kind of break it down into 3 buckets, I would say, passion, founder product fit, right? And so founder market fit and then founder product fit. And so passion we already talked about, right? That kind of conviction around the idea, that kernel of the story about why you chose to build this particular company. And it also relates to what Rachel was saying about storytelling, right? That is a very important piece of your storytelling, is how did you develop this idea and why you? The founder market and founder product fit is really about, are you the right team to do this? Do you have, I love businesses that are kind of reinventing old school businesses that don't have a lot of tech. Do you have a background in that industry? So we have a CEO in the class this year who's a trial lawyer who, saw a problem that trial lawyers are facing and came up with a solution supported by artificial intelligence to solve that problem. That's a great example of founder product fit. And she also has a technical team that goes with it. The third and the most kind of the harder to kind of sort of understand and, in advance of kind of seeing these founders over a long period of time is really learning mindset, and so I call it learning mindset, you call it learning mindset, you call it grit, sort of in that area of are you going to be able to quickly take in new information and incorporate it and change your thinking. We also talk about kind of the idea of strong opinions loosely held, which is to me about learning mindset, right? So you have a really strong opinion about what you're doing, but you are not closed off to new data and new information, and you are taking that. That's gonna make you stronger because you're gonna be able to suck in everything that your mentors and advisors and the market and your customers are telling you to get better and stronger, and faster. So I would say that's the one key, is having that learning mindset to a company that's really, able to take off. And that has to exist both on an individual level and also on a team level. Have you developed a way to challenge each other safely and to learn as a team? And do you have a great dynamic in your team for doing that?
Yeah, and yeah, I call it the like know what you don't know. You know, it's so important. There are founders I meet who don't even seem to have a clear understanding of what their weaknesses are or what they don't know yet. And that's always a red flag when you see that. You know, you absolutely have to know what are your areas of learning. And then for me personally, I mean, again, yeah, have something you're passionate about, something that is going to improve the quality of people's lives in some way, shape, or form that you personally connect to or relate with. And I think also being a good leader is very important for the CEO, who's the one who's pitching you. And is it somebody who can unite, you know, their whole team under a common vision and mission? Which goes along with the branding as well. It's because there's the external branding, but then there's the internal. It's, can you keep a team together? And also, you know, the best CEOs I've ever come across are the ones who always do hire people smarter than them. And a lot of that is about knowing, again, the knowing what you don't know and like knowing where your gaps are and saying, okay, here's an area where we don't have someone and we need someone, or here's an area of something I'm not good at and I need to find somebody else who is good at that, and not having an ego about that and just being very candid and transparent and comfortable with knowing that you're not going to be great at everything, and finding the people who are the absolute best and the absolute smartest to be able to fill those roles for you, and not getting intimidated by their intelligence, right?
Many times we can help you.
Yeah.
Like if you're honest about it and you don't have that person yet, we typically can know people that would fill that role and help you build out your team.
So I'm going to hop in because we have under 10 minutes and I want to get to something very important. So if you don't know, today is a massively historic day in venture and tech. There is a very large event going on up north, which is a reason why we don't have as many investors as we would normally have. And it's an all-raise conference where there's something like 500 women that are investors, all converging up north. If you don't know what all-raise is, go to allraise.org. It's an amazing organization to help promote both female founders and female funders. And I want to, one, let everybody know about the organization that's going on, but for me, I've been in the tech space 20 years, and you kind of see progress, and sometimes there's 2 steps back, and it's been a long road, and sometimes over the last 3 years, I haven't been as optimistic as I would like to think I am as a human. But I'm starting to feel very optimistic. I'm starting to see diversity. It takes a while because we're a 7 to 10 year sort of cycled business. I'm feeling good, but I would like each of you to maybe end with some final comments on the future of women and underrepresented founders or funders and how you're feeling about it.
You know, I'm feeling very positive about the change, and you know, my partner Assi is actually up at Allraise right now representing us, and I think, I can't remember who said it, but there was a great quote which was, you can't be what you don't see. And so if we can get more women into, you know, the CEO roles, into, you know, being able to have the authority to write checks, I think that's really important, and you're starting to see the beginning of it. I know that like femtech, for example, was getting hardly any investment, and now you're seeing like much more going into that space. I mean, I feel personally very positive about it, and I think these groups like Allraise are going to help do that.
Yeah, I mean, I feel the same way. I think we do have it slightly better here in Los Angeles. I think that the representation overall, both in the women writing checks and the female founder community, is just bigger than it is. It feels palpably different for me when I go to New York or San Francisco to be in a room of this community. So that's great. So let's take that and continue to build on it. I think if you look down the whole value chain of kind of venture and entrepreneurship, from, you know, there's conversations happening about we need more women LPs, you know, we need more women GPs, we need more women writing small, you know, angel checks. We're working on there's efforts to activate women as angel investors. There's efforts to support women as entrepreneurs and sort of to get women more comfortable with the idea of becoming an entrepreneur. So if you take the whole plethora of efforts sort of across that value chain, there's so much happening that it does feel, you know, really positive. And who knows how fast we can change some of these 2%, 3% depressing numbers, but I do believe that we are in the process of changing them.
Yeah, I have a slightly different perspective on it. I'm going to be a Debbie Downer for 1 second, but then I promise I'll turn it around. Okay, so I think all initiatives like All Raise are fantastic. I don't know how much progress we're going to make through a series of events. I think the biggest problem we have is that whoever raises the fund holds the power. That's the long and short of it. And the problem is that even now, the majority of women and people of color who are even in partner positions in venture capital are not on the investment committees and are not able to actually pull the trigger and make the investment decision. And so I feel like there's a somewhat false sense of, yay, it's getting better, because a lot of venture capital firms are promoting a lot of women and people of color into partner positions without actually putting them on the investment committees. And so I'm concerned about, optically, it's looking very nice. Like, I mean, it's improving. It's not great. But does that really translate into real power and influence? And so I think what needs to happen is we need to actually teach women, teach people of color how to effectively fundraise. That is the name of the game. Mm-hmm. If you know how to fundraise, you hold the power, the end. And what's historically happened in venture capital firms is the people who know that, which is kind of a secret art, if you will, pass it down to their mentees. Mm-hmm. And because they're passing it down to who they want to pass it down to, you can imagine that a lot of people get excluded from that conversation and from that education and learning process. So while I support the event stuff, I do think we need to find more substantive ways of educating women who want to become investors, for instance, or women, female founders who want to know how to effectively fundraise. And for me, what I'm doing personally is I'm going to be teaching a class in the Stanford Business School purely on fundraising for women founders and
I
women
teach
investors.
a class at the USC Business School
And
purely on fundraising, and I'm just saying you should teach here.
Yeah, and I can do that too. But like what Robin's doing, what I'm trying to do, what a lot of other people are looking at doing, if we can get more of those initiatives, I think that would be great, personally.
Great, so we have 3 minutes left, so you guys get like a round robin of one last piece of advice for women that are trying to fundraise in the room because they're entrepreneurs with companies. And one last piece of advice, because what you just said is very important, and there were people that raised their hands that they want to be investors, for somebody who's looking to become an investor. Boom.
Okay, so I just want to double click on what they said in the earlier panel about not to get discouraged and sort of not to assume if you're not getting traction with your round, it's because you're a female founder or whatever, and you should just go in the corner and cry. There was a company that came through my program this year who closed a successful seed round, and they had talked to 280 different meetings, or meetings with different firms, right? And then they closed a successful round with a great fund. So it takes a long time to find the right fit. So just look at each meeting as a learning experience. Try to get whatever you can about it. Just know that it's going to take a long time. As someone else commented, like venture capitalists are taking a big bet. They're with you for the long haul. They don't have the right to pull their money out. It's a big decision for them. It's a lot of money at stake. So don't give up. Just keep learning. And if this is really your passion and you've got no other choice but to start this company, then don't give up.
Just to jump on that, I think in terms of priorities, you want to have your dream investor last. So think about the learning experience. You want to have those investor pitches. You want to get the feedback. So by the time you've got to that dream investor, you've really nailed your pitch. And then the other thing I'll say about what you just mentioned was, I think it's important actually as entrepreneurs, and I'm going to go out there for Muse Capital and say, it's really important that we give founders feedback on why their pitch didn't work.
Yes.
And I've had amazing female founders come to us that might be a little too early, and this was triggered by one of the founders saying, hey, sorry you're not going to invest, but can you let me know why? Or what could I have done better in my pitch? And that is really, really important, because that allows us to go back and be like, okay, this is what you need to do. And obviously we have to prioritize. Obviously, we all have time constraints, but that's really important. And we want to give back. And
The flip side of that, for those that you want to be investors, means that it's really important if you're going to build yourself up as a valued quality investor to give that feedback so that you're helping the entrepreneur.
yeah.
Yeah, my advice is just do it, guys. Like, don't be scared. Don't worry about imposter syndrome. Like, just do it. There's a lot of talent out there that I think we all see, and unless you act on that, it's not going to happen. So just do it.